Hey guys, tonight we sail straight into the damp, miserable belly of history because you're about to become a sailor on a medieval ship. Imagine the wood beneath your boots creaking with every hesitant step, soaked with brine, sweat, and regret. The air is a stew of tar, mold, and something vaguely fishy that you can't quite identify. Probably best not to try. You're surrounded by men who look like they were born tired and smell like they've been haunting this ship since the last crusade. It's dark, it's cramped, and you're thinking, maybe this was a bad idea. You're right. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand on the deck of a merchant cog somewhere in the late 14th century. The port behind you is fading into the mist, and ahead lies only horizon. The crew moves around you like ghosts who forgot to die, barefoot, bleary-eyed, and each carrying the faint perfume of salted despair. The ship itself is barely seaworthy. Thick planks lashed together with faith and rope, its hull patched more times than your grandmother's quilt. The mast looms above you, groaning under a single tattered square sail that smells faintly of mildew and gull droppings. The captain shouts orders from the stern, his voice a mix of confidence and mild insanity. You don't know his name yet, only that he wears an oversized hat and looks like a man who's been arguing with the wind for years. Around you, men haul ropes, coil lines, and curse the sea under their breath, as though insulting it will make it behave. One fellow spits into the water and mutters, "For luck," though you suspect luck abandoned this ship several voyages ago. Below deck, the real horror show awaits. The living quarters, if you can call them that, are cramped enough to make a coffin seem roomy. You duck through a low hatch and are greeted by a damp, sticky darkness. Hammocks swing in the gloom like ghosts' laundry. The air is thick with the smell of old sweat, ale, and that one mysterious odor that's somehow both sweet and sour. You find a space no wider than your shoulders and realize this is where you'll sleep, eat, pray, and possibly die. The first rat scurries past your boot before you even sit down. You flinch, but no one else reacts. Apparently, these rats are considered fellow crew members. Someone even named one Thomas. You try not to think about what Thomas is eating. It's said that ships like this were the lifelines of medieval trade, carrying grain, cloth, and wine across the North and Baltic seas. But romantic paintings leave out the part where the ship constantly leaks and sailors spend half their time bailing water with buckets made of sadness. Every few hours you hear the groan of timbers and the slap of waves, and you wonder which will give out first, the hull or your optimism. Historians still argue whether life at sea built character or just slowly dissolved it. Some accounts claim sailors were proud, loyal, and fearless. Others describe them as drunken, desperate men escaping land-based debts and bad marriages. Maybe both are true. Either way, you're now one of them, another body in a floating wooden prison where privacy is a myth and personal hygiene is optional. You find yourself learning the ropes, literally. The main task of a new sailor? Do what you're told. Don't fall overboard and try not to anger the bosun. He's the one with a voice like a collapsing cathedral, and a whip he swears is just for motivation. You nod along, pretending you know what splicing the main brace means. Spoiler, it's not nearly as exciting as it sounds. By dusk, the ship has drifted far enough that the coastline is just a gray smudge. The wind picks up, filling the sail and pushing you toward open water. It's both thrilling and terrifying. Thrilling because adventure is technically happening, and terrifying because adventure usually ends with someone missing a limb. You taste salt on your lips, feel the sting of wind in your eyes, and think, maybe this won't be so bad. Then the cook opens a barrel of fish. The smell immediately disproves your optimism. A bell rings somewhere near the bow. The sound carries over the creaking deck like a funeral toll for common sense. It's time for your first shift at sea. You join a line of men hauling on ropes thicker than your wrist, each pull sending a shock through your arms. The ropes are sticky with tar and salt, and soon your hands feel like you've been wrestling an angry squid. But you keep going, because stopping means being shouted at, and shouted at means humiliation in front of everyone. Night falls. The sea becomes a black mirror, reflecting the stars that seem impossibly close. It should be beautiful, and in a way, it is. But beauty is wasted on exhaustion. You're too tired to appreciate the cosmos when your stomach is still negotiating with the motion of the ship. You lie down in your hammock, the ship rocking you like an anxious cradle, and wonder if anyone ever actually enjoyed this. There's a myth among sailors. If you fall asleep your first night without being sick, you'll survive the voyage. You cling to that thought, though deep down you know myths on a medieval ship are just lies with better marketing. Somewhere above deck, the captain laughs at something the helmsman said. You can't hear the words, just the sound, low, weary, almost human. The rats squeak, the timbers sigh, and the ocean whispers through the gaps in the hull. You close your eyes and breathe through the damp air, hoping that maybe, just maybe, you'll dream of solid ground. But the ship lurches suddenly, sending your hammock swinging. Water sloshes underfoot. Someone curses, someone prays, and a single word echoes through the darkness. Leak. You pull your blanket tighter and tell yourself it's fine. It's always fine, until it isn't. The next morning begins with shouting, which you quickly learn is how all mornings begin on a medieval ship. The sun hasn't even decided whether it wants to rise yet, and already someone's yelling about ropes, buckets, or divine punishment. You drag yourself up from your hammock, your back aching from the wooden beam that doubled as a pillow, and stumble onto the deck. The light stabs your eyes like a personal insult. The wind is up, the sea restless. The ship groans as though it resents being awake, too. You catch a whiff of salt, tar, and what might be yesterday's vomit drying on the planks. That smell? Yeah, it's going to be your roommate for the foreseeable future. Someone thrusts a rope into your hands. Haul, the bosun barks. You don't even ask what you're hauling. You just haul. The rope bites into your palms, coarse as a medieval insult. Your fingers start to burn, and you realize quickly that the ocean doesn't care how new you are. It doesn't do mercy, only muscle memory. By the time the sun fully rises, you're drenched in sweat. Not that it matters, everyone smells equally terrible. So personal scent has stopped being an individual trait. You can't tell where your sweat ends and the sea begins. The deck shimmers with water, sunlight, and filth, and you wonder if this counts as romance of the sea. Spoiler, it doesn't. The ship is moving well now, sails full and ropes taut. You try to imagine what it must have felt like for the first people who trusted their lives to planks and canvas. Equal parts bravery and stupidity. Historians still argue whether medieval sailors were pioneers of exploration or just unlucky souls with no better job prospects. Judging by the state of your hands and stomach, you lean toward the latter. A seagull lands on the railing beside you, stares for a moment, and then squawks directly into your face. You consider that an omen. The crew does too. Some spit over their shoulders. Others mutter charms against bad luck. Superstition isn't just a hobby here. It's life insurance. You overhear one sailor telling another that women aboard ships bring storms, while someone else swears by carving crosses into the mast to keep sea monsters away. You look at the mast, covered in shallow carvings, and realize either the ship has had a lot of pious crewmen or a lot of near-death experiences. The boatswain stalks by, his face a road map of old scars. He mutters about wind direction, then smacks a younger sailor on the back of the head for existing incorrectly. You quietly decide to blend into the scenery. By midday, the ship is deep into open water. The coastline is gone, just endless blue in every direction, as if the world forgot to finish painting itself. The waves roll like slow breaths, and you start to feel that dizzy tug of isolation, the strange realization that your whole world now floats on something that wants to swallow it. The cook appears announcing food, which is generous terminology. Lunch is a slab of salted pork that could double as a building material, a biscuit so hard it could probably deflect arrows, and a mug of ale that tastes vaguely metallic. You chew carefully, the way you'd chew a suspicious mushroom. You remember reading, or maybe hearing, that sailors often broke their hardtack with a hammer. You don't have a hammer, so you settle for gnawing it like a determined rodent. A nearby sailor jokes that the maggots in the biscuit add protein. You laugh weakly, mostly because it's true. As the ship tilts, your stomach tilts too. Seasickness creeps in like an uninvited guest. You focus on the horizon, but the horizon keeps moving. Your brain decides to hate you. You lean over the rail and make an offering to the sea. Around you, veterans chuckle. One pats your shoulder. Everyone feeds the fish their first week, he says kindly. You'll get your sea legs. You're not sure whether sea legs means balance or emotional resignation. The sky darkens just slightly in the afternoon, clouds forming a heavy quilt overhead. You feel the air change, cooler, sharper, humming with energy. The captain yells orders, the crew scrambles, and the sails are trimmed. You watch the horizon with wary eyes. The sea is unpredictable, and every sailor knows that calm never lasts. To distract yourself, you start noticing the small things, the way the ropes hum in the wind, how the wood beneath your feet feels alive, pulsing with every wave. There's a strange rhythm to it all, a heartbeat shared by ship and sea. You start to understand why some sailors call their vessels she. It's not affection. It's respect mixed with fear. Ships can love you one day and drown you the next. By sunset, the sea flattens again, painted gold and crimson. You lean on the rail, exhausted, watching the sky melt into water. It's beautiful, yes, but you're too aware that beneath that surface lies nothing but darkness and depth. Historians still debate whether medieval sailors truly grasped how vast the oceans were, or if they just pretended not to think about it. You can understand why they might avoid the thought. The unknown is easier to face when you don't name it. As night approaches, you feel a small flicker of pride. You've survived a day, barely, but it counts. You've hauled ropes, eaten something that qualifies as food, and avoided being yelled at too much. The stars start appearing, crisp and cold, like someone scattered powdered glass across black velvet. The navigator uses them to chart the course, tracing constellations older than memory. He points out the North Star and mutters something about destiny, though you're pretty sure destiny involves less nausea. You try to sleep again, but the ship moves differently now, rolling deeper, sighing louder. You lie in your hammock, feeling the sway, the creak, the faint splash of water against the hull. Somewhere, a man snores like a dying walrus. Somewhere else, someone whispers a prayer to St. Nicholas, patron of sailors. A rat scurries across your foot. You decide not to react. You're too tired to care. You think about home, about solid ground, about the absurd idea that anyone does this willingly. Maybe adventure isn't about glory. It's about endurance. Maybe all those tales of brave mariners left out the part where bravery mostly smells like sweat and hopelessness. You close your eyes and drift, your mind rocking with the ship, caught between dread and dream. You're no longer entirely sure where the sea ends, and you begin. You wake to a smell that could probably knock out a small bear. It's not one smell. It's a team effort. Sweat, salt, smoke, and something vaguely fungal that might once have been bread. The ship rocks lazily in the morning light, but your stomach still lurches like it's on its own private storm. You roll out of your hammock, land on the damp floorboards, and immediately regret having a nose. Get used to it, one of the older sailors grunts as he passes by, clutching a mug of ale that probably doubles as mouthwash. After a week, you stop smelling anything at all. He grins, revealing about 4 teeth, 3 of which might be mutinous. You try breathing through your mouth, but that's worse. The air below deck is thick and heavy, a blend of humidity, mildew, and unwashed humanity. Every breath feels like sipping from a damp sponge. You climb the ladder to the main deck, desperate for a whiff of clean ocean air. Spoiler: there's no such thing as clean air on a medieval ship. The moment you emerge, you're hit with a cocktail of tar smoke, rotting fish, and whatever died in the bilge. The ocean might look beautiful, but she definitely doesn't smell like it. The crew goes about their morning chores, scrubbing the deck with sand, coiling ropes, pretending they're not dying inside. You spot a sailor dumping a bucket overboard and realize it's not water, it's waste. Human waste. You make a mental note to stop leaning on the railing during meals. A historian once wrote that ships like this were floating cities of odor, which is generous. Cities have sewers, air circulation, and laws against urinating near the kitchen. You have none of those luxuries. Even the animals aboard, the chickens, goats, and the one angry pig kept for meat, add their own contributions to the olfactory symphony. The pig stares at you as if it knows it's the only one on board guaranteed a quick death. Historians still argue whether medieval sailors were simply used to bad smells or if their senses had given up entirely. Some letters from the era describe ships that reeked so powerfully that dock workers could smell them before they even appeared on the horizon. You start to believe it. Breakfast is served, a chunk of something that might be bread and a ladle of something that might be stew. You take one sniff and decide not to ask questions. The cook, a barrel-shaped man with the emotional warmth of a soggy mop, ladles out portions from a pot that hasn't been properly cleaned since the 100 Years' War. He calls it ship's pudding. You call it suspicious. You sit on a coil of rope, spoon in hand, watching the horizon as you eat. The ship sways, the stew sloshes, and every bite tastes faintly of despair and seawater. You chew anyway, because hunger doesn't care about flavor. Above, the wind shifts. The sails flap with a hollow snap, and the captain yells orders. You watch the crew spring into action, their bare feet thudding across the deck. Even after days at sea, the rhythm of the work still fascinates you, the way everyone moves in sync, a strange choreography of survival. One sailor near the bow hums a tune while swabbing the deck. It's low, rhythmic, almost hypnotic. You realize songs are as important as food here. They keep the men sane, or at least distracted. The words change daily, often crude or nonsensical, but the rhythm stays the same. You start to hum along, quietly at first, until the man notices and grins. That's it, he says. Sing, and maybe the ship will stay awake. You don't ask what happens if the ship falls asleep. You've learned not to ask questions that might have superstitious answers. By midday, the sun is relentless. The deck radiates heat, turning your boots into ovens. Sweat drips from your brow, mixing with salt spray. You long for shade, but there is none. Only the fluttering sails and the endless gleam of water. You hear one sailor mutter about painting the deck with whale oil to keep it smooth, though you can't tell if he's serious or delirious. You try not to think about what happens when there's no breeze. The older sailors call it the doldrums, a windless purgatory where the ship drifts aimlessly and tempers rot faster than the meat. Some say sailors used to whistle for wind. Others say that angered the sea spirits. Historians still debate which superstition was more dangerous. You figure either way, whistling in this heat would only summon sweat. As the day drags on, you begin to notice that the ship itself seems to have moods. It creaks, like it's complaining, sighs when the waves are gentle, and moans deep in its belly when the sea grows restless. You swear you can feel it breathing through the deck boards, a slow, wet rhythm, as if the ocean and the ship are sharing lungs. You decide not to mention that observation out loud. The last man who said the ship was alive ended up scrubbing the bilge for 3 weeks. By evening, the smell below deck has reached new levels of artistry. The cook spilled fish oil earlier, and the combination of that with damp wood and body heat has created something scientists today might classify as weaponized stench. You lie in your hammock, trying to focus on anything else. The rhythmic squeak of the rigging becomes your lullaby. Somewhere nearby, someone coughs, someone snores, and someone whispers a prayer you can't quite make out. You think about how strange it is, this floating world of smells and sounds, where privacy doesn't exist and comfort is a myth. Yet somehow, people choose this life. Maybe it's the promise of freedom, or maybe it's the illusion of it. Either way, you're here now, a tiny creature on a vast, indifferent sea. You close your eyes, but even in your dreams, the smell lingers. It's not just in your clothes or your hair, it's in your soul now, baked in by salt and misery. You'll never forget it. And, according to the veterans, even when you reach land again, the scent will follow you like a loyal dog. So you breathe shallowly, mutter a curse at the ocean, and let the rocking of the ship drag you down into uneasy sleep, half hoping you'll wake up on solid ground, half knowing you won't. The next morning, your stomach growls before you even open your eyes, which is bold of it, because breakfast on a medieval ship is more punishment than nourishment. You swing out of your hammock and land in a puddle that you decide not to investigate. Everything below deck is damp. your clothes, your bedding, your soul. The air tastes like salt, yeast, and despair. Up on deck, the cook is already shouting. His kitchen, a smoky iron cauldron chained to the deck, is little more than a soot-covered box. You join the line of men waiting for their morning portion, the only excitement being whether today's stew will contain something vaguely identifiable. He ladles you a bowl of thin, greasy liquid. Bits of what might once have been peas or pork float inside, shimmering in the light like guilty secrets. You take a sniff. Yep, smells like old socks and brine. Eat up, the cook grunts. Keeps the sea out of your belly. You're not sure what that means, but you eat anyway. The first mouthful is salty enough to pickle your tongue. The second nearly breaks your molars on a lump of unboiled grain. The third, well, you stop counting. Hunger wins every argument eventually. When you're done, the cook hands you a chunk of hardtack, the infamous sailor's biscuit. It's about the size of your palm and roughly the density of granite. You tap it against the railing. It makes a satisfying clack. That's fresh, the cook says proudly. You nod, because what else do you do when someone brags about an edible rock? You try biting it. The biscuit fights back. You dunk it in your stew until it softens. But all that does is make it taste like damp wood. You chew slowly, imagining you're gnawing through ancient history itself. Historians still argue whether hardtack was food or just a social experiment in suffering. Either way, it's working. Mid-morning, the crew gathers for their tasks. You're assigned to the rigging, which means climbing a rope ladder up the mainmast. The wind is sharp, the wood slick, and your stomach still heavy with regret-flavored breakfast. The view from the top is incredible, though. Endless water in every direction, glinting gold under the sun. You can almost forget the grime below deck. Almost. From up here, you spot barrels stacked near the bow. That's where they store provisions, meat, salted until it's indistinguishable from driftwood, and ale so sour it doubles as cleaning fluid. You watch as a sailor pries open a lid. The smell drifts upward, a ghostly mixture of salt, mold, and old death. You gag, gripping the rope with both hands. Later, the bell rings for the midday meal, and the crew scrambles like gulls at a fish market. This time it's salted beef. The cook hacks off chunks with a knife that's seen too much action. The meat is gray and stiff, its edges glistening with fat crystals. You tear off a piece and chew until your jaw aches. It tastes like bitterness and boredom. One of the older sailors, a wiry man named Robart, laughs at your expression. You'll be grateful for it in a week, he says, gnawing on his portion like a wolf. When the meat's green and moving on its own. You blink. Moving. He nods solemnly. The worms come once the salt stops doing its job. Little ones, white as pearls. Adds texture. You try to laugh. It comes out as a whimper. A quirky detail you pick up from Robart. Sailors used to soak rancid meat in seawater to freshen it before cooking. Supposedly, it removed the smell. In practice, it just added an extra layer of salt and irony. Historians still debate whether this was desperation or optimism. You suspect both. Dinner doesn't improve things. By evening, you're sitting cross-legged on deck with a hunk of cheese that smells faintly like old boots and a mug of ale that might actually be alive. The crew laughs, tells dirty jokes, and trades rumors about sea monsters. Someone swears he once saw a serpent longer than the ship. Another claims he drank wine from a mermaid's skull. You learn quickly that sailors measure truth the same way they measure distance, poorly. The sun dips into the sea, painting the waves in orange and violet. You take another bite of your meal and look at the horizon. The colors are breathtaking, though you can't decide whether that's beauty or the smell of your cheese. You hear a story then, a whispered one, passed between men like contraband, about a voyage where the provisions ran out and the crew resorted to boiling leather straps for soup. Some even ate the candles made from animal fat. The storyteller says it casually, but you notice how the laughter fades afterward. Hunger out here is a shadow everyone fears but never names. After dark, the cook scrapes the pot clean with his knife and hums a tune older than any flag. You catch the lyrics, something about the sea taking what it loves. The words stick in your mind as you drift toward sleep. The ship creaks beneath you. The waves slap against the hull. And the smell of salted misery lingers in your hair. For all the hardship, though, you can't help but feel a strange bond forming with the others. You share food, filth, and fatigue. It's a kind of brotherhood forged in discomfort. No one's clean, no one's comfortable, but everyone's alive, and that's something. You close your eyes and imagine a real meal, fresh bread, soft butter, fruit that isn't shriveled beyond recognition. You swear you can taste it just for a moment. Then the ship tilts and the taste washes away with the motion. You fall asleep thinking about how absurd it is to crave something as simple as a pear. But on this ship, that's the stuff of dreams. You wake up to a sound like someone hammering a coffin shut. Turns out it's just a sailor pounding a new lid onto a water barrel. The irony doesn't escape you. You've been at sea long enough to know that nothing on this ship is ever truly fresh, especially not the water. Drink sparingly, the bosun warns as you approach. We'll be rationing till the next port. You peer inside one of the barrels. The liquid looks suspicious, brownish, murky, and flecked with floating debris that might be wood or mold or maybe both. You inhale, gag, and immediately understand why beer is the beverage of choice here. A sailor beside you dips a cup into the sludge, sniffs it, shrugs, and drinks. Tastes better than dying, he mutters. They call it water, but it's more like a soup of despair. After weeks at sea, even the best stored barrels spoil. The oak staves swell and shrink with the humidity, letting in air. Mold blooms. Algae takes up residence. Sometimes you find wriggling things inside, little white worms that wiggle like they're auditioning for a nightmare. You start to think dehydration might be the polite option. Historians still argue whether medieval crews actually drank plain water at all, or if it was always beer, wine, or watered-down spirits. Beer was safer, boiled during brewing, mildly alcoholic, and too bitter for most bacteria to enjoy. Of course, safe is relative. After 3 weeks in a sun-baked barrel, even beer begins to taste like regret and feet. You're handed your ration for the day, a small wooden cup of the same cloudy liquid everyone's drinking. It's warm, salty, and faintly sour, as if it's already been through someone else first. You sip slowly, pretending you're at a fancy tasting. Ah, yes, you whisper to yourself. Hints of oak, sweat, and existential dread. The older sailors joke that if you close your eyes and squint your tongue, you can almost imagine it's wine. You try, you fail. By midday, the sun burns overhead and thirst becomes a living thing inside you. You think about rivers, wells, ice. You think about how every drop of rain that falls into the ocean just becomes more salt. Someone suggests catching rainwater in the sails the next time it storms. The captain overhears and approves. "If the sea won't give, the sky might," he says. That's as close to optimism as anyone gets out here. A quirky trick spreads among the crew. Tie a cloth around your neck and suck on it when thirsty. It doesn't help much, but it gives you something to do besides complain. Another sailor swears by chewing rope fibers. You try that once. The cook, ever resourceful, starts serving ship beer, a watered-down ale so weak it could probably be used as mouthwash. It's better than the water, though only barely. You learn quickly that drinking too much of it makes you dizzy, but not in a fun way. Your stomach sloshes like one of the barrels, and you begin to suspect the human body wasn't designed to function on a diet of salt and spoiled yeast. By afternoon, the smell of the barrels worsens. One bursts open with a wet crack, releasing a gush of foul liquid across the deck. The crew groans. That was one of the last good ones. You join in the cleanup, mopping, scraping, pretending you're not crying inside. The bosun records the loss grimly, muttering about bad luck and poor storage. "Should have sealed 'em tighter," someone says. The bosun replies, "Should have stayed on land." The captain holds a brief meeting at dusk, announcing reduced rations. You're to get half your usual cup per day until the next port. A chorus of groans follows. "Complain later," he says. "Complainers get double work." No one volunteers an opinion after that. As the sky darkens, you watch the crew prepare for night. A few gather near the stern, trading stories about miraculous rainfalls that save ships from thirst. One man claims he once saw a captain slice open a barrel of vinegar and drink it straight, to stay alive and angry. Another tells of sailors who distilled seawater by hanging pots over candles, a process that probably consumed more patience than calories. Historians still debate whether such improvised methods actually worked. You suspect they didn't, but you like the idea of desperate ingenuity. Later, a drizzle begins, a light, teasing mist that isn't quite rain but still feels like hope. The crew rushes to unfurl spare cloths, letting the droplets gather. You tilt your head back and catch some on your tongue. It's cold, clean, pure heaven. For a few seconds, the world feels right. Then the drizzle stops. The ocean is cruel like that. Just enough mercy to remind you what you're missing. By nightfall, your mouth feels like sandpaper again. You lie awake, listening to the slosh of what remains in the barrels. It's strange how you can be surrounded by water, yet dying of thirst. You think about how absurd the world must have seemed to the first sailors, how small they must have felt, floating in this endless desert of blue. You dream of fountains, wells, rivers running through meadows. You dream of cold cups pressed to your lips. But even in your dreams the taste is wrong, salty, metallic, like the sea refuses to let you forget it. When you wake, you'll drink the same foul water again. You'll pretend not to mind. You'll raise your cup with the others and toast the impossible to another day alive. And you'll mean it, because out here, alive is enough. You start the day by realizing that your arms no longer belong to you. They ache like overworked pulleys, your shoulders burn, and your palms are a map of blisters. The sea doesn't care, though. The bosun's voice rips through the dawn air. All hands on deck. You stumble upward, eyes half shut, muscles begging for mercy. The winds change direction overnight, and the ship needs her sails reset. You grab a rope, again, and pull until your back feels like it might snap in two. Rope work sounds simple until you remember that Every line on this ship is thicker than your wrist and weighs as much as regret. The deck is slick from the morning dew, and you nearly lose your footing as you heave. The boatswain shouts, "Heave, you dogs!" which is ironic, considering the actual ship's dog probably gets better rest than you. Around you, the crew moves like one exhausted organism. Pull, grunt, breathe, repeat. You climb into the rigging, each rung of the rope ladder biting into your feet. The higher you go, the stronger the wind. It stings your eyes, tangles your hair, and fills your mouth with salt. The mast sways beneath you, alive and unpredictable. You tighten a knot around the sail and glance down. Bad idea. The deck below pitches and rolls like a drunk trying to dance. You cling tighter, muttering promises to every deity you can think of. When you finally descend, your hands are raw and trembling. One sailor laughs. "First time's the worst," he says, showing his palms, calloused, scarred, the color of mahogany. After a month, they stop bleeding. You can't tell if that's supposed to be comforting. Below deck, you're put on scrubbing duty. The ship's interior needs cleaning daily, though cleaning here means smearing salt water around until things smell less awful. You kneel on splintered planks, bucket beside you, scrubbing with sand and rags. The smell of brine and sweat seeps into your pores until it feels like part of your identity. Historians still argue whether daily deck washing was about hygiene or superstition. Some say it kept disease away. Others say it kept the ship's spirits calm. You decide either reason is valid if it stops the boatswain from yelling. By midday, you're hauling barrels again, rolling them along wooden slats slick with tar. Your back screams in protest, your shirt sticks to your skin, and every muscle feels stretched thin as rigging rope. One sailor jokes that the only thing harder than life at sea is death, and at least that one's shorter. A quirky tidbit surfaces during the work. Sailors used to smear tar on their hands and feet to prevent blisters. You try it. It works, sort of. You also smell like a candle left out in the sun. The work never ends. When the sails are trimmed, you scrub. When the scrubbing's done, you coil ropes, patch leaks, polish brass, mend nets. There's no off switch, no moment when the ocean says, "You've done enough." The sea demands constant movement, constant attention. It's like babysitting a dragon. You stop for a minute and it eats you. By afternoon, the wind strengthens. The captain orders a change of course and everyone rushes to adjust the sails. You pull, push, climb, shout, and repeat until your body moves without thinking. For a brief moment, it's almost exhilarating, like being part of something immense and alive. The ship responds to every command, the ropes humming, the sails snapping, the deck tilting. You feel absurdly powerful. Then your foot slips. You crash onto the planks, hard enough to see stars. Someone hauls you up, laughing. "The sea's testing you," he says. "She only keeps the ones who fight back." You nod, trying to hide how much your ribs hurt. When the day finally fades, the sky is streaked with red and violet. You collapse near the bow, arms limp, watching gulls circle overhead. You've spent 12 hours working for the privilege of not drowning. The ocean stretches endlessly around you, calm for now, deceptive as ever. The boatswain walks past, muttering, "Idle hands draw storms." You think about that, how rest feels like guilt here, how stillness makes everyone uneasy. Maybe that's why they keep working, even when there's nothing urgent to do. Out here, motion feels like protection. You look down at your hands. The blisters have popped, the skin torn and shiny. You dip them in a bucket of seawater. It stings like fire, but somehow it's a clean kind of pain. One sailor tells you to rub your hands with vinegar to toughen them. Another says, vinegar's for the wounds of cowards. Historians still debate how much of medieval medicine was science and how much was blind optimism. You suspect it's a 50-50 split. Night falls, bringing a brief illusion of peace. The stars glitter above, the ship creaks like a tired creature, and you lie back against the deck. The muscles in your back pulse with every heartbeat, but your mind feels oddly calm. You think about how this life, hard, filthy, relentless, has its own rhythm. Work, eat, ache, sleep, repeat. There's no room for doubt, because doubt wastes energy. Somewhere nearby, the bosun hums a tune about land so green it blinds you. You almost smile. Land feels imaginary now, like a story sailors tell themselves to stay sane. Before you drift off, you whisper a promise to yourself. Survive this week. That's all. One more week. You can do anything for a week. The ship rocks gently beneath you, and your body, despite its protest, begins to accept the rhythm. The sea doesn't lull you, it dominates you. But in that domination, there's a strange kind of comfort. You close your eyes and let the motion carry you, wondering what hurts more, the work or the waiting for it to start again. You wake to thunder. No, not thunder exactly, but that deep, rumbling growl that lives somewhere inside the ocean when it's angry. The deck is a hive of movement before you even realize what's happening. Men are shouting, ropes are snapping taut, and the wind feels sharp enough to flay skin. You stagger upright, clutching a post as the ship tilts dangerously to one side. The first storm of the voyage has arrived, and she's in a foul mood. Rain slashes sideways, driven by gusts that make breathing feel optional. The sail above thrashes like a living thing trying to escape, and the mast groans like it might break free. You can taste the salt, thick, metallic, overwhelming. Your clothes cling to you like seaweed. Get those lines down, the bosun bellows. You stumble forward, slipping, grabbing a rope that immediately burns your palm. The deck is a battlefield of water, wind, and panic. Every wave hits like a punch, every order shouted into chaos. You pull, you slip, you swear, you pray. You're not religious, but right now you'd pledge your soul to any god willing to calm the sea. The lightning flashes, splitting the night into jagged white frames. For a heartbeat, everything is crystal clear. The terror on the faces around you, the curve of a wave taller than the mast, the pure, merciless beauty of nature when it stops pretending to be kind. Then darkness again. Someone screams. You can't tell who, it's swallowed instantly by the wind. A barrel rolls loose, slamming across the deck and disappearing overboard with a splash that sounds too much like a man's fall. You don't have time to look. You haul on another rope, your muscles shaking, your mind blank except for the word survive. The ship shudders, timbers crying out under pressure. You feel the deck rise beneath you, then drop. The fall makes your stomach lurch like you've stepped off a cliff. The sea explodes upward, soaking everyone in a single monstrous wave. You can't see, can barely breathe. The world is water and noise and fear. Historians still argue whether medieval sailors truly understood storms or just endured them. Some believed they were punishment for sins. Others said they were tests, divine exams with no retakes. You think about both theories while clinging to a rope and hoping the mast doesn't snap. The wind screams in your ears like laughter. You've never felt smaller. A sailor beside you pulls something from under his shirt, a small wooden charm carved into a fish. He kisses it, mutters a prayer, and ties it to the rigging. You do the same with the scrap of cloth you call a lucky rag. It's wet, useless, but it feels like doing something. Superstition spreads faster than the rain. Someone starts singing, a low rhythmic chant to ward off bad spirits. Others join in. You add your voice, shaky but present. It's nonsense, but the sound holds everyone together. For a moment, the chaos becomes something sacred, something shared. A flash of lightning splits the horizon again, and for an instant, you swear you see something out there, a shape on the water, dark and huge, riding the waves. A whale, maybe? Or something older. You blink, and it's gone. You'll tell yourself it was just the storm playing tricks, but deep down, a sliver of old fear roots itself in your chest. As the hours crawl by, exhaustion becomes your only companion. Your hands are raw, your throat hoarse from shouting. Every muscle trembles. The storm doesn't care. The ship pitches violently, throwing you against the rail. You taste blood and salt. You laugh, because at this point, it's all the same flavor. The captain appears, water streaming off his coat, face set like carved oak. He shouts orders through the wind, steady, commanding, terrifyingly calm. For all his flaws, you realize this is his element. Some men were made for land. Others were born for this chaos. You're not sure which you are yet. Eventually, after what feels like a lifetime of noise and fear, the sky begins to lighten. The rain slows from daggers to drizzle. The wind softens into a sigh. The waves, still tall but less murderous, roll instead of crash. You look around. Exhausted men slumped against the rail, ropes frayed, sails torn, eyes hollow. The storm didn't kill you, but it took something anyway. One sailor crosses himself, whispering, "The sea gives back what she spares." You don't know what that means, but it sounds right. You notice a barrel missing, a section of the railing splintered, and one empty hammock below deck. You don't ask whose. Out here, questions like that are left for calmer seas. A quirky tidbit spreads after the storm. Someone swears they saw St. Elmo's fire dancing along the mast, a ghostly blue glow said to mean protection from lightning. You didn't see it, but the others insist it's a sign the ship's blessed. Historians still debate whether that glow was electricity or imagination. You prefer to think it was mercy. The next day dawns soft and gray. The sea lies calm, exhausted from its tantrum. You sit on deck, your body aching in places you didn't know existed. Around you, the crew moves slowly, repairing what's broken, drying what can be saved. The air smells cleaner, salt, wood, rain. No fear this time, just relief. You take a deep breath. It burns a little, but it's good pain. The kind that says, you're still here. You look out at the horizon, calm again, but impossibly vast, and realize something's changed. You've seen what the sea can do. You've survived it. And somehow, you respect it more now than ever. You run a hand along the railing, the wood still slick from rain. All right, you whisper to the waves. You win. The ocean doesn't answer, but it doesn't need to. You both know it's true. That night, when the stars return, the air is cool and gentle. The deck smells faintly of tar and hope. You lie in your hammock, every creak of the timbers a lullaby, and for the first time, you don't fear the next storm. You just wonder when she'll come again. The storm has passed, but the damage lingers, not in the wood or the ropes, but in the bodies of the men. You wake to coughing, hacking, and a chorus of groans that sound like a medieval choir of despair. The air below deck is heavy, thick with the smell of wet clothes, sweat, and something sour. It takes you a moment to realize it's the scent of sickness. You crawl from your hammock and step carefully over buckets, puddles, and sleeping bodies. One sailor sits slumped against a barrel, his face pale, lips cracked. He waves weakly when he sees you, and you wave back, trying not to stare at the sores on his arms. "Scurvy," someone mutters beside you. "Got him bad." You've heard the word before, but now it's real, ugly, visible. His gums are swollen, dark as bruised fruit, and when he speaks, his teeth wobble. You feel your own mouth with your tongue, paranoid, half expecting the same. Scurvy, you learn, is the curse of long voyages, the slow punishment for a life without fresh food. Historians still argue whether medieval sailors understood the cause. Some blamed the sea air, others thought it was punishment for sin, or maybe just bad luck. You know the truth now, weeks without anything green, anything fresh, and your body quietly rebels. At breakfast, you pick at the same old salted meat and hardtack. No fruit, no vegetables, no mercy. You'd sell your soul for an orange. Someone once told you that in some ports, captains bring lemons aboard to keep the crew healthy. This captain, apparently, prefers discipline to citrus. The ship doctor makes his rounds, a thin, nervous man with ink-stained fingers and a pouch of mysterious powders. Doctor might be generous. His treatments mostly involve vinegar, prayer, and a terrifying device that looks like a spoon crossed with a torture instrument. When he reaches the sick man, he presses a hand to his forehead and nods gravely, as if that alone counts as medicine. "Rest," he says, handing the man a cup of ale. "And faith." Then he moves on. Faith doesn't cure scurvy. The day crawls by, filled with the sounds of coughing, spitting, and occasional retching. The air below deck is so stale you feel like you're breathing through cloth. You escape topside, where at least the wind still remembers what freshness feels like. But even there, you can't ignore the toll. The men move slower now, weaker. Every task takes longer. Every climb leaves them gasping. The boatswain growls, calling them lazy, but his voice lacks its usual bite. He's coughing, too. By afternoon, a fever starts making its rounds. You see one man collapse at the mainmast, his skin hot and slick. Another vomits over the rail, then wipes his mouth and goes back to work because there's no one else to do it. You start to wonder how anyone ever thought the sea was romantic. A quirky tidbit floats among the crew that some sailors rub themselves with vinegar to keep disease away, or chew on bits of rope for medicine. You try the vinegar trick once and immediately regret it. You smell like a salad that lost the will to live. As night falls, the ship doctor lights a candle in the sickbay and mutters over a small wooden crucifix. You watch him mix something from his pouch into a mug of ale, a concoction that fizzes suspiciously. The patient drinks it, grimaces, then promptly falls asleep. Maybe it worked. Maybe it just knocked him out. Historians still debate whether medieval remedies actually healed or merely distracted. Sleep is impossible. The air below deck feels diseased, heavy with human misery. You lie awake, counting the sounds, the rhythmic creak of the hull, the waves slapping against the side. The shallow, ragged breathing all around you. Occasionally, a cough breaks the pattern. Sometimes it stops and doesn't start again. You close your eyes, but the darkness swims with fever dreams. You see the sea rising like a hand reaching for you. You hear whispers, your own voice maybe, saying that the ocean always gets what it wants. Morning brings no relief. The doctor moves slower now, pale and sweating himself. He spills half his powder into the bilge and curses softly. You hear rumors that one of the barrels of meat went bad, spreading sickness through the ship. Someone blames the cook, someone else blames the devil. The cook blames everyone equally. You volunteer to help fetch water for the sick, mostly to stay busy. You find yourself holding a cup to the lips of the man with the swollen gums. He drinks greedily, then gasps. Home soon? You lie and say yes. Above deck, the wind is kind again. The sky is blue, calm, deceitful. You find it almost offensive that the world can look so peaceful while everything below is rotting. You think about how fragile all of this is, the wood beneath your feet, the bodies beside you, your own breath. It's all so temporary, so easily claimed. Later, the boatswain orders a burial. The dead man is wrapped in canvas, stitched closed, weighted with stones. The captain says a few words, brief, emotionless. The sea takes her own, he mutters, and the body slides overboard with a soft splash. The crew watches in silence. You realize it's the quietest the ship has ever been. For a moment, you think you hear something beneath the waves, a sound like distant singing. You tell yourself it's imagination. But a few sailors cross themselves just the same. When night returns, you sip your rationed beer, staring into the dark. The sea glows faintly with plankton, tiny sparks of light that drift and fade. It's beautiful in a haunting way, a reminder that even death here glimmers for a moment before sinking. You murmur to yourself, half asleep, maybe the sea's not cruel, maybe she's just honest. And somehow that thought makes it a little easier to rest. By now you've learned the rhythm of the sea, the way it sighs, the way it whispers. But lately there's a new rhythm creeping into the ship. It's the low murmur of discontent, a growl that hides behind tired laughter and clinking mugs. It starts small, a grumble here, a curse there, whispers shared under the groan of the timbers. But the sound grows every day, and you can feel it under your skin like static before a storm. Food is low again. The salted meat tastes worse than ever. The biscuits have gone from hard to fungal, and the ale smells faintly of vinegar. The men argue over portions now, snapping at each other like dogs over scraps. The cook locks his stores at night and sleeps beside them with a knife in hand. You can sense something shifting. No one trusts the captain anymore, not since the last storm, not since the sickness. He hides in his cabin more often now, nursing his own bottle of brandy while the boatswain runs the deck. You've overheard him praying some nights, his voice trembling like a man who knows he's lost the crew's faith. "Bad sign," says Robart, your wiry friend from before, while scraping mold off a hunk of cheese with his dagger. Once the captain starts talking to himself, it's just a matter of time. He glances over his shoulder. "Keep your head low, lad. Storms ain't the only thing that sink ships." Historians still argue whether most mutinies were born from cruelty or hunger. You're starting to think it's both. Hunger gnaws at patience first, then reason. After that, even the calmest men start thinking about knives. It's night when you first hear the word whispered, mutiny. You freeze, pretending not to have heard. The voices come from near the bow, hushed but urgent. "We could take her easy," one man says. "He's soft now, scared. The bosun's with us." Another spits. "And the loot? We sell the cargo, split it." vanish. There's laughter, low, bitter laughter that sounds more desperate than brave. You lie in your hammock that night, pretending to sleep, listening as footsteps pace the deck. You can feel it in your bones. Something is coming. The next day, tension hangs thick in the air. The captain appears briefly, red-eyed, his coat wrinkled, his hand trembling as he grips the rail. "We hold course for Calais," he announces. The men mutter. You can't hear the words, but you know they're not good ones. He walks back to his cabin under a dozen pairs of glaring eyes. Even the sea seems to sense it. The wind has died, leaving the sail slack and the ship drifting. The heat builds. Sweat trickles down your neck as flies buzz around the galley. The ocean lies flat as glass, mocking, silent, reflecting the tension above. By dusk, the whispers are louder. You hear someone sharpening a blade against the rail. You tell yourself it's for work, but you don't believe it. You notice the boatswain speaking quietly to a small group near the mainmast. His face is grim, his gestures sharp. When he catches you watching, he narrows his eyes. "Back to your post," he snaps. You obey instantly. Below deck, even the rats seem quieter. The air feels charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. You think about all those sailor tales, the ones about mutineers cursed by the sea, doomed to wander as ghosts. You wonder if those were warnings or just stories to keep men obedient. Historians still debate whether superstition or discipline held ships together. Tonight, neither seems strong enough. After sundown, it happens. The ship is quiet except for the creak of rope and the occasional slap of a wave against the hull. You're dozing when you hear a crash, then shouting. You scramble up the ladder, heart hammering. On deck, lanterns swing wildly as men struggle in the dim light. The captain stands near the helm, pistol drawn, voice raw with fury. "Stand down," he roars. But they don't. The boatswain steps forward, knife in hand. "We're done starving for your pride," he shouts. The crew closes in around him, faces hard, eyes fever bright. You freeze, not sure which side to move toward. The ship feels smaller suddenly, the air electric. The captain fires into the air. The sound explodes, echoing across the sea, but no one flinches. Someone tackles him. The pistol clatters away, and chaos erupts. You back into the shadows, watching as fists, blades, and fury collide. The lantern light flickers, painting everything in violent gold. It's over faster than you expect. Just a few minutes, maybe less. The captain falls, clutching his side, his face pale. The boatswain shouts orders, his voice shaken. "Throw him in the brig!" But the crew hesitates. Someone mutters, "No brig on this ship." The boatswain stares at the horizon for a long moment, then nods. Then the sea can keep him. You turn away before you see it happen, but you hear the splash, the same sound you heard during the storm when the sea took someone else. Only this time it's deliberate. Silence follows, the kind that hums in your ears. Afterward, no one speaks of it. The boatswain, now captain, takes the wheel. The old captain's hat sits on his head like a curse. The crew moves mechanically, eyes down, mouths shut. The air smells of salt, sweat, and guilt. You wonder if this is what freedom feels like. That night, Robart finds you near the bow. "Don't think too hard on it," he says quietly. "We're still alive. That's all that matters." He spits into the sea. The ocean don't care who gives the orders. You nod, but inside, you're not sure you believe him. The sea may not care, but it never forgets. The next dawn comes too bright, too calm, and far too quiet. The mutiny hangs over everything like a damp fog that won't burn off. The new captain, once the boatswain, stands at the helm pretending authority fits him. It doesn't. His voice cracks when he gives orders, and even the seagulls sound unimpressed. You notice that no one calls him captain. They just do what he says because they're too afraid not to. Fear, it seems, is as good as rank when the sea is watching. The ship drifts toward a smudge of green on the horizon, land. After endless days of salt, sun, and sickness, it looks like paradise, but the veterans just grunt. Don't count on it, Robart warns. Ports always promise more than they deliver. By midday, the smell of soil and wet vegetation hits your nose, almost dizzying after weeks of brine and rot. You lean over the rail, eyes wide as the shoreline sharpens. Low huts, smoke curling upward, a handful of ships bobbing near the docks. Palm trees sway lazily, taunting you with their shade. Land ho, someone cries, but the words lack their usual joy. You can't forget what happened last night. Even the sea seems to hold its breath. You dock awkwardly, scraping the pier. The new captain curses, but the crew moves with renewed energy. Anything to get off the ship. The gangplank slams down, and within minutes, half the men have vanished ashore like rats escaping a flood. You follow them, boots thudding on dry ground that feels foreign underfoot. It's solid, yes, but it also feels wrong, like the earth still swaying. The port is small, hot, and loud. Traders shout in 3 different languages. Goats wander between barrels. The air smells of spice and sewage in equal measure. It's overwhelming, but after weeks at sea, even chaos feels luxurious. You breathe deep, ignoring the stink. Historians still argue whether medieval sailors actually enjoyed port visits or just endured them as part of the cycle of misery. Judging by your surroundings, you'd say both. You head for a market stall where a woman sells fruit. Real fruit, bright, fragrant, alive. You nearly weep. You hand over a few coins for a bruised orange and devour it in 3 bites, juice running down your chin. It's the best thing you've ever tasted. You could build a religion around this orange. Careful, Robart warns beside you. Too much fresh food too fast'll gut you. He's not joking. The cook once told you about sailors who gorged on fruit after long voyages and spent days doubled over. You pace yourself, but only barely. As the day goes on, you notice the darker side of port life. Drunken sailors stagger through the streets, shouting, fighting, laughing too loud. Brothels glow like lanterns in the dusk, their doorways full of promises that usually end in debt or disease. You pass a man being whipped for stealing bread, his screams blending with the market chatter. So much for paradise. Your new captain does business with a group of merchants near the docks. You can't hear what's said, but you see the way he gestures toward the ship's cargo hold, barrels of grain and salted fish meant for trade. The merchants shake their heads, unimpressed. Whatever deal he hoped for isn't going well. That night, the crew gathers in a dockside tavern, its roof low and its air thick with smoke. The ale is warm, the bench is sticky, but it feels like heaven anyway. You drink, laugh weakly, pretend you're human again. Someone starts singing, and for a brief, blessed hour, you almost forget the blood in the water behind you. Then a brawl breaks out. It begins with a spilled mug, escalates to insults, and ends with someone pulling a knife. You duck under a table as bodies crash into furniture. The owner, a massive woman with arms like rope coils, breaks up the fight by hurling a barrel at the offenders. It works. You clap politely from under your hiding spot. Later, you stumble back toward the docks, half drunk, half dreaming. The ship looms in the moonlight, dark and patient. You stop to watch the waves lap against the hull. They sound almost like whispering. Maybe it's just the drink. Maybe it's not. You notice a figure on deck, the new captain, staring at the sea. His face is unreadable, but there's a tremor in his hands. You think about going up, saying something, but you don't. What would you say anyway? Nice mutiny. Instead, you wander toward the end of the pier, where the water glows faintly with reflected moonlight. You toss the last of your orange peel into the waves. It drifts for a moment, then vanishes beneath the surface. Behind you, laughter spills from the tavern, mingling with music. But out here, the sound feels distant, unreal. You realize how strange it is that sailors crave land so badly, yet always end up running back to sea. Maybe the ocean's misery is addictive, the certainty of it. Land offers choices, and choices are terrifying. You overhear two dock workers talking nearby, their words just clear enough to catch. Another crew came through last week. Fever took half of them. The rest sailed anyway. You shiver. By morning, you're back aboard, along with the others who didn't vanish into portside debts or diseases. The new captain counts heads, expression grim. Fewer than before, but enough to sail. The ship pushes off. The water catches the hull like an old friend pulling you close. The port shrinks behind you, its noise fading into the steady rhythm of waves. You thought you'd feel relief leaving, but it's just emptiness. Back home soon, Robart says beside you, but neither of you believes it. As the wind fills the sails again, you glance at the spot on deck where the old captain once stood. The boards are stained dark there, and though they've been scrubbed, you can still see the outline if you look long enough. You wonder if the sea remembers his face, or if she's already forgotten, the way she forgets everyone eventually. The horizon glows with sunrise, deceptively peaceful. You take a deep breath of salt air, already tinged with the ship's familiar stench, and think, land never really saves anyone out here. It just reminds you how far gone you already are. By now, you've spent so many weeks at sea, that time itself feels warped. The days blend together, stitched by hunger and habit. You rise with the sun, pull ropes, curse quietly, eat something vaguely edible, and collapse again. It's a rhythm carved into your bones. But there's one rhythm that doesn't fit, one heartbeat on this ship that doesn't match the rest, the captain's. He stands apart now, not just in rank, but in distance. The new captain, formerly the bosun, wears authority like a borrowed coat. It's too big for him, too heavy. He spends hours on the quarterdeck staring at the horizon, lips moving silently as though he's arguing with the wind. The crew avoids him when they can, offering half-hearted salutes that feel more like warnings than respect. You start to notice strange changes. His once booming voice is quieter now, more hesitant. When he speaks, there's a tremor in it. Not fear exactly, but doubt. You hear him muttering to himself about maps, directions, omens. The helmsman swears he saw him consulting a compass that no longer points north. Historians still argue whether medieval navigators truly understood their instruments or just pretended to while praying. You're leaning toward pretended. One afternoon, he calls everyone on deck. His hair is matted, his eyes red-rimmed, and his hands grip the railing so tightly the knuckles shine white. "We're turning south," he announces. The crew exchanges wary looks. South wasn't the plan. South means longer voyages, strange waters, uncertain trade routes. Robart mutters under his breath, "He's chasing ghosts." "South for what?" someone shouts. The captain's eyes flash. "For fortune, for wind, for safety." Three reasons that sound more like wishes. No one argues out loud, but you can feel the muttering build again. You wonder how long before someone else decides he's unfit to command. The sea, after all, is democratic in its cruelty. Everyone gets a turn to lose their mind. You work the ropes while watching him. He paces the deck constantly now, muttering about the stars being wrong. At night, you see him with a lantern and a cracked astrolabe, whispering calculations no one understands. Sometimes he laughs, sometimes he cries. Once, you catch him singing softly to the mast, an old sailor's hymn turned almost like a lullaby. "Storm took more than the captain," Robart says quietly one night. "It took the sense right out of him." Below deck, rumors spread like mold. Some say the new captain struck a deal with the sea to spare them during the storm, but the payment's due. Others whisper that he's cursed, the ghost of the old captain still steering in his stead. You laugh at first, but then you remember the way he stares at empty water, like seeing something you can't. A quirky detail surfaces from one of the older men. Apparently, captains used to carry a dead reckoning book filled with their course, speed, and secrets of navigation. If a captain died, the crew could follow it home. But this one, he threw the old captain's log overboard. "Dead man's mistakes," he said. "Now the sea holds their map, and you're sailing blind." Each day his temper grows shorter. He snaps at the smallest errors, curses the wind for shifting, blames the waves for disobedience. Once, he strikes a sailor across the face for laughing too loud. The laughter stops after that. By the third week, even Robart stops making jokes. The food is running low again, and the water is down to sludge. The sickness hasn't returned, but the air feels thick with something else. Dread, maybe. You catch the crew exchanging glances, measuring one another. There's always a moment before things break, a collective inhale before the scream. You can feel it coming. One evening, the captain orders everyone to silence the bells. "They call things," he says, eyes wild. "Bad things." The men nod, but avoid his gaze. When he walks away, someone mutters, "Aye." Madness answers faster than wind. The stars come out, clear and sharp. The sea is calm, unnervingly calm. You sit near the bow, staring into that stillness, when you hear footsteps behind you. It's the captain. He stops beside you, watching the horizon. "You hear her?" he asks softly. You blink. "Hear who?" "The sea. She talks to those who listen." His voice is almost gentle. "The last one didn't listen. That's why she took him." You nod carefully, the way you'd nod to a man holding a lit torch near oil. "Maybe she's done talking now," you offer. He smiles faintly, but it's the wrong kind of smile, tired, cracked. She never stops. Then he walks away. Historians still debate how much command at sea depended on charisma versus sanity. You're starting to think the difference is academic. Later that night, you wake to shouting. The ship lurches sharply. You scramble to your feet. A few sailors are gathered near the stern, lanterns swinging wildly. The captain's nowhere in sight. "He jumped," someone says flatly. "What?" "Right over the side. No warning." You rush to the rail. The moonlight glints off the waves, calm and endless. Nothing moves but water. No cry, no struggle. Just the slow swallowing dark. For a long moment, no one speaks. Then Robart sighs. Sea took another. By dawn, The helmsman quietly assumes command. No one argues, no ceremony, no speeches, just a man standing at the wheel, doing what needs doing. The crew moves slower but steadier. Maybe the fear's dulled, or maybe it's just fatigue. You glance toward the horizon, half expecting the sea to rise up and demand payment for this quiet. But she doesn't. Not yet. That evening, a faint breeze returns, carrying the ship forward again. You lean on the rail, staring into the foam where the old bosun vanished. You can almost hear his voice in the creaking of the mast, his mutter in the hum of the ropes. The ship goes on, but you can't shake the feeling that something unseen is steering now. You whisper a half prayer to no one in particular. Let it end quietly, you say. The ocean, ever the indifferent god, answers only with a wave against the hull. Soft, rhythmic, eternal. The days that follow are quiet, too quiet. The ship glides over a sea so smooth it feels wrong, the kind of calm that only exists before something terrible remembers you. The new helmsman, now by default another captain, keeps the ship steady, speaking little. No one mentions the last man's name. At sea, you learn not to tempt ghosts, but ghosts have their own schedules. It starts small, a shadow on the horizon that isn't a cloud, moving faster than weather should. The lookout squints, lowers his spyglass, and shouts a single word that tightens every muscle on deck. Sails. At first you think it's excitement, company, rescue, a trade ship maybe, but the mood changes fast when he adds, "Black flag." You feel the air go still. The men look at one another, faces gone pale. Someone whispers, "Pirates." The crew moves instantly, ropes creaking, voices shouting orders. The helmsman curses and orders full sail. The ship lurches forward, wood groaning under the strain. You rush to your post, hauling lines with shaking hands. The wind fills the canvas, but behind you, the dark sails grow larger. Whoever's chasing you is faster, hungrier. Historians still argue whether medieval pirates were heroes, villains, or just opportunists with better marketing. To you, they're a death sentence wearing confidence. The pursuing ship cuts through the waves like it was born to hunt. You can see it clearly now. Sleek hull, dark wood, sails streaked with red like blood left to dry. It gains on you easily. A voice booms across the water, distorted by distance, but unmistakable. Heave to, and no one dies. You laugh, partly from terror. That line's as old as the sea, and it's never true. The new captain refuses to surrender. "We fight," he shouts, though there's nothing to fight with. The ship carries no cannons, just barrels, ropes, and stubborn men. Someone passes around boarding pikes, while others grab knives, hammers, anything that might slow the inevitable. You arm yourself with an oar. It feels ridiculous, but in moments like this, absurdity is comfort. The pirate ship closes fast, skimming the waves with an agility that feels supernatural. The crew's silent, focused. You catch glimpses of them, men with bandanas, some bare-chested, faces smeared with grime and paint. A few wave, almost cheerfully. That's how you know they've done this before. Impact comes with a crash that rattles your bones. Hooks bite into your rail, ropes lash out, and suddenly the air is full of shouts and smoke. You swing your makeshift weapon and hit something solid, a hand maybe. Someone shouts in pain. You don't stop to see who it was. The pirates move like wolves, efficient and fast. One leaps onto the deck beside you, grin wide, eyes bright with mania. "Sorry, friend," he says, swinging a blade. You duck instinctively, the steel cutting through the air where your head was. Robart tackles him from behind, the two men tumbling across the deck. You turn, looking for an escape that doesn't exist. The sky seems to pulse with noise, steel clanging, wood cracking, men screaming. Then you hear it, a high-pitched whistle from the pirate ship. Just one note, a command. In seconds, the fighting stops. The pirates pull back, weapons lowered. You stand there, panting, heart hammering. A tall figure strides across the planks connecting the two ships. A woman, her coat long and dark, hair tied back, face half shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. You blink. You've heard tales of women pirates before, but they always sounded like sailors' fantasy. This one's real. She surveys your ship with cool disinterest. "Cargo?" she asks, her voice sharp as rigging rope. The captain stammers something about trade goods. She cuts him off with a gesture. "Take what's worth taking," she says to her crew. "Leave them the air and the wood." The pirates swarm again, but not with violence. They move methodically, lifting barrels, cutting open crates, laughing at your pitiful supplies. One tips his hat to you before hefting a sack of grain onto his shoulder. "You boys eat worse than we do," he jokes. You almost thank him for noticing. Within minutes, they've stripped the ship of most of its cargo. As they retreat, the pirate captain pauses beside you. Her eyes are gray, stormy, old. "You got a ghost on board," she says softly. You blink. "What?" She glances toward the mast. "I can smell it. The sea keeps score." Then she's gone, leaping back to her ship like she's part of the wind. Their sails unfurl, and in moments, they're gone. Just another shadow in the endless blue. Silence. The crew stands stunned, surrounded by splintered barrels and empty crates. The new captain stares after them, jaw clenched, pride bleeding from his face. "We live," he mutters, like he's trying to convince himself. You sit on the deck, still shaking, staring at the horizon. The sea looks so calm again, so innocent, like nothing ever happened. That's the worst part. It always does. Later that night, you can't sleep. You keep hearing the pirate woman's words. You've got a ghost on board. You think of the old captain, the mad bosun, the men lost to sickness and storm. The ship creaks softly in the dark. A sound you've learned means it's breathing. Robart stumbles over, flask in hand. "Still awake?" "Yeah." He sits beside you, handing the flask over. The drink burns your throat, but you welcome it. "Think she was right?" you ask. He shrugs. "Course there's ghosts. Every ship's full of 'em. You just gotta learn to share space." He laughs softly, then looks out over the black water. "Some say every plank's got memory, that when the wind howls just right, you can hear the sea telling its stories through the wood." You listen. The wind hums faintly, low and steady, like a whisper half remembered. Maybe he's right. Maybe the ghosts aren't gone. Maybe they're part of the ship now, woven into its ropes, buried in its hull. You close your eyes and let the sound wash over you. Somewhere out there, another ship might be watching, another crew clinging to life. You realize that out here, everyone's both predator and prey, each just waiting for the sea to pick a side. You murmur to yourself, half prayer, half resignation, "Just let her forget us for one more night." The sea answers with a single soft wave against the hull like a heartbeat. Morning creeps in slow and sullen, a pale light dribbling across the battered deck. The air is quiet, too quiet again. No gulls, no chatter, just the steady slap of waves against the hull, like the ocean's heartbeat, reminding you who's really in charge. You stretch your aching arms and watch the men move about in silence, faces drawn, eyes hollow. There's less of everything now, less food, less water, less laughter. Only the ghosts seem to multiply. Someone's nailed a small wooden cross to the mainmast overnight. You don't ask who did it, but everyone avoids looking directly at it. Sailors are superstitious creatures, and even the whisper of faith feels dangerous out here. Robart mutters that it's bad luck to invite God to watch too close. You nod because that's safer than disagreeing. Below deck, the smell has deepened into something foul enough to have personality. Mold creeps up the walls. Damp clothing never dries, and the air tastes of rust and rot. The men cough more often now, and when they sleep, they groan through nightmares that sound too much like drowning. You spend the morning patching a section of the hull that's begun to leak again. The tar burns your hands, but you don't care. It's almost comforting to have pain that's predictable. The new captain, quiet and gray around the eyes, stands near the helm, muttering to himself while pretending to chart a course. He's not mad yet, but you can see the road from here. Historians still argue whether sailors of the Middle Ages were truly religious or just afraid of running out of luck. You think it's both. You've seen the men pray, curse, cross themselves, and whisper to the waves in the same breath. You've done it yourself. After midday, a thin mist rolls across the deck, soft, eerie, dreamlike. The sun turns milky behind it, and everything feels muted, muffled. Someone jokes that the world's gone quiet so heaven can listen in. No one laughs. The chaplain, if you can call him that, since he's really just the one man who knows how to read, climbs onto a barrel and begins to recite a psalm. His voice is thin but steady, weaving through the air like a thread of sanity. You find yourself listening despite your best efforts. For they that go down to the sea in ships, he says, see the works of the Lord. You almost snort. Yeah, we've seen them all right, but the words have a strange pull. Maybe it's the rhythm, maybe the sound of belief itself, but for a brief moment, the men seem calmer. They even hum along when he begins a slow, low hymn, something about mercy on the waters. You join in softly, feeling the vibration through your chest more than hearing it. Then something thuds below deck, once, twice, heavy and deliberate. Everyone freezes. The chaplain stops mid-verse. "What was that?" he whispers. The new captain frowns and sends two men to check. You wait, hearts beating in sync with the waves. When the men return, their faces are pale. "The cross fell," one says quietly. You don't need to ask which one. That night, no one speaks above a whisper. The lanterns swing gently, casting strange shadows that make the walls seem alive. The ship creaks, groans, sighs, its usual noises, but tonight they feel different, intentional. You lie in your hammock, staring up at the planks above you, listening to the ship breathe. You're not sure when you started believing that it's alive, but now the thought feels less ridiculous. It's as though every death, every prayer, every drop of sweat has soaked into the wood, giving it a soul. Maybe the pirate woman was right. Maybe there is a ghost on board. And maybe it's not angry. Maybe it's just lonely. A quirky superstition drifts through your mind, something you once overheard from a drunk sailor in port. If you speak your name to the sea, she'll remember you. But never whisper the name of a dead man, or she'll think you're calling him back. You pull your blanket tighter and try not to think of the names you've heard lost overboard. At dawn, a rainbow arcs faintly over the horizon, pale and watery. It should feel hopeful, but it doesn't. The sea glitters with deceptive calm. The chaplain takes it as a sign and leads another prayer. The rest of you mostly pretend to listen. The day passes in monotony, patching sails, scrubbing decks, trying to ignore the faint smell of decay from the hold. The food's nearly gone. You chew through your ration with mechanical acceptance. Even hope has a flavor now, and it's stale. That night, while you're on watch, Robart joins you by the rail. His face is thinner, eyes sunken, but sharp. "You ever think," he says quietly, "that the sea's just one big church, full of sermons nobody survives long enough to remember?" You glance at him. "If it is, we're lousy congregation." He chuckles, low and tired. "Aye, but maybe that's the point." You watch the moon ripple across the water, bright and cold. The waves move gently, as if breathing in time with your thoughts. You swear for a heartbeat that you hear singing again, faint, distant, carried by the wind. Not words, just a hum. Beautiful, eerie, infinite. Robart tilts his head. "You hear it too?" "Yeah." He smiles faintly. "Then maybe the ghosts forgive us after all." You don't answer. You just keep watching the horizon, where the sea and sky meet in an endless gray kiss. When your shift ends, you crawl back into your hammock and stare into the dark. You think about prayers whispered into salt air, about how faith and fear taste the same when you're desperate. You wonder if God actually hears ships like this, or if he just listens and lets the waves decide. The sea outside whispers its steady refrain, rise, fall, like a chant, like penance. You drift off imagining the waves as choir voices, each crash against the hull, another verse of the ocean's hymn. And somehow, despite everything, you sleep. Not deeply, not peacefully, but with the faintest sense that someone or something is keeping watch. When dawn comes this time, it's gray. Not storm gray, just dull and flat, like the sky's too tired to bother with color. You wake to the same sounds as always, ropes creaking, the faint slap of waves, a cough or two from below. But something feels different, a kind of collective weariness that no wind can shake. You've lost track of days. The sea doesn't tell you what month it is. It just keeps existing, endlessly indifferent. The new captain, the helmsman turned reluctant leader, calls a head count at morning bell. His face looks older, carved by exhaustion. The numbers don't add up. One man's gone missing. No one saw him jump. No one heard a splash. Just gone, folded neatly into the horizon, like the sea collected its due. You all stand there a moment, staring at the water, not daring to ask whose turn it'll be next. Historians still argue whether the hardest part of a medieval voyage was starvation, disease, or despair. You'd say it's the way silence settles in after loss, the thick, heavy quiet that presses on your chest. The work continues because it has to. You scrub decks, adjust rigging, patch holes. Your muscles move on autopilot while your mind drifts somewhere between dream and memory. The world beyond the ship starts to feel unreal, like maybe it never existed. Land becomes myth. Around noon, the wind dies completely. The sails droop, limp as surrender flags. The ocean flattens into a mirror, reflecting the clouds so perfectly it feels like you're floating in the sky instead of on water. For a long while, no one speaks. The quiet is almost holy, almost unbearable. "Dead calm," Robart mutters finally. "Worst kind of curse." You ask why, though you already suspect the answer. "No wind to carry us," he says. "No current strong enough to help." The sea just holds you still till you start hearing your own thoughts too loud. He's right. By evening, you'd trade a storm, a pirate attack, anything for movement. The air grows hot and heavy. Sweat clings to your neck. Flies buzz lazily in the heat. The barrels of water, what's left of them, start to smell again. The men grow restless. Someone snaps at someone else for breathing too loud. It's a small argument, but small things have teeth here. By the next day, tempers boil. A fight breaks out between two sailors over a broken bucket. It's clumsy, desperate, more exhaustion than anger. The captain doesn't even intervene. He just watches, his face blank. When it's over, the loser sits bleeding by the mast, staring at his hands like they're foreign objects. A quirky detail surfaces that night. Someone claims you can summon wind by whistling, but that it also calls spirits. Half the men whistle anyway, low and tentative. The rest glare at them like they've invited death for tea. You try not to pick sides. The sea doesn't move. 3 days pass like that. The food runs out entirely. The cook's gone quiet, sitting beside his cold stove, staring into the ashes. The chaplain has stopped preaching. Even Robart's jokes die halfway through. The ship's timbers creak louder now, or maybe you're just noticing more. It's as though the ship itself is hungry. You start hallucinating smells, fresh bread, apples, even grass. Sometimes you swear you can taste them, brief flashes of memory so vivid they feel cruel. You tell yourself it's just your mind trying to survive itself. At dusk, clouds gather low and heavy on the horizon. The men stir, desperate. "Wind's coming," someone says, voice trembling with hope. You all watch as the line of dark sky crawls closer. But it's no wind, it's rain. The first drops fall like a blessing. You tilt your head back and let the water run into your mouth, laughing. The others join in, mouths open, hands outstretched. Buckets are set up everywhere, catching what they can. It's the purest thing you've tasted in months. Some men cry openly. For a moment, everything feels lighter. The sea ripples again. The ship groans as if waking from a dream. You think maybe, just maybe, the ocean's decided to let you go. But at dawn, another body's missing. No one says a word. The chaplain nails another cross to the mast. You feel like the ship's slowly becoming a floating cemetery. Each nail a heartbeat, each prayer a final breath. Later that morning, Robart joins you at the bow. His face looks distant, almost calm. "You ever think," he says softly, "that if you stare long enough at the sea, she starts staring back?" You nod, not trusting your voice. "She don't want us to go home," he adds. "She wants us to remember her." You look out at the horizon, flat, endless, blinding in the sun, and realize he's right. The ocean isn't just a place anymore. It's inside you now, in your veins, your bones, your thoughts. You're not just on the sea, you are it in some quiet, terrible way. That night, the stars are brighter than they've ever been, hard and sharp against the black. The ship drifts, no wind, but no storm either, just suspended between nowhere and nothing. The air smells faintly sweet, like rain that forgot to fall. You can't sleep. You climb to the deck and sit beside the mast. The crosses gleam faintly in the starlight. You close your eyes and whisper the only prayer you remember, something about forgiveness, though you're not sure who's forgiving whom anymore. The ship sways gently, the ropes humming like strings on an unseen instrument. You hum along without meaning to. The sound is low, almost peaceful, until you realize Robart's voice is humming too, from somewhere behind you. You turn to speak, but he's gone, just his empty hammock below swinging softly. You stand there a long time staring at the spot where he should be. Then you look at the water. It looks back. When dawn comes, the sky is pink and pale, and you feel strangely calm. There's no fear left, only a hollow sort of acceptance. You're still here. You're still breathing. For now, that's enough. You don't dream anymore, not properly. When you close your eyes, you see the horizon rolling behind your eyelids, the slow pulse of water that has become more constant than your own heartbeat. The ship creaks like an old throat clearing itself, and you realize it's the only voice left that hasn't fallen silent. The others, those who remain, speak softly now, as though afraid to disturb something ancient and listening. The sea has claimed nearly everything. The barrels are empty, the sails threadbare, the prayers used up. You sit near the bow, staring into that impossible blue, and wonder when the ocean stopped being an enemy and became a mirror. Days pass, or maybe it's only one long day stretched thin. The wind is back now, but gentle, like the breath of someone asleep. It pushes you toward home, or what passes for it. The coastline appears first as rumor, then as a faint green smudge, then as land, real land. Your throat tightens at the sight. You half expect it to vanish when you blink. The few who are left gather at the rail. No one cheers. You've forgotten how to celebrate. The ship groans one final time as the keel scrapes sand, and then, just like that, you're still. For the first time in months, the world stops moving. The silence is deafening. You climb down the gangplank on trembling legs. The earth feels strange beneath you, solid but wrong, like it's swaying under your skin. You stand there, dizzy, staring at the shore that should mean salvation. The air smells of grass, flowers, smoke. Beautiful smells, yet alien after so long. You kneel, touch the ground, and feel nothing but shock. A few villagers appear, curious and cautious. They glance at your ragged clothes, your sunken faces, your ship that looks half dead. One man offers a jug of water. You take it, lift it to your lips, and freeze. The water's clear, clean, perfect, and it frightens you. You sip carefully, as though purity might burn. It does, a little. Historians still argue whether returning sailors were ever the same as the ones who left. You know they weren't. You can't scrub out the smell of the sea, or the memory of creaking planks, or the sound of men whispering their last words into the dark. You'll carry that forever, like salt in your blood. The crew disperses slowly. Some wander into town, some simply vanish. The ship's shadow stretches long on the sand, a skeleton made of wood and regret. You linger at the waterline, watching the tide creep forward to touch your boots, as if reminding you that it never really lets go. That night, you find a quiet place near the dunes and make a small fire. The crackle sounds wrong after months of waves. You stare into it, half expecting the flames to sway like the deck. You try to sleep, but the world is too still. You miss the rocking, the endless noise. You realize with a chill that the sea has taught you how to need it. You think of Robart, of the old captain, of the pirate woman, of the nameless men swallowed whole. You whisper their names to the wind, knowing you're breaking the rule but needing to. The night listens. Maybe they do too. When dawn breaks, you walk down to the shoreline again. The tide has carried bits of the ship's wood onto the sand. Splinters, rope, a scrap of sail fluttering like a memory. You pick up a piece of driftwood and run your thumb over its worn grain. It hums faintly, or maybe that's just your pulse. Either way, it feels alive. A gull calls overhead, harsh and lonely. The waves stretch endless and patient before you, as if waiting for you to return. You realize you could walk away now, find a bed, eat real food, forget, but you also know you won't. Once the sea gets inside you, land starts to feel temporary, so you sit, feet in the surf, letting the cold water creep around your ankles. You close your eyes and listen, not to the noise of men or storms or fear, but to the rhythm beneath it all, that deep, endless heartbeat. It sounds almost like peace. Maybe this is what survival really means, not escaping the sea, but carrying it quietly inside you. The waves retreat, roll back, return again. You breathe with them, slow and steady, until you can't tell where your breath ends and the tide begins. You whisper to the horizon, not in prayer this time, but in thanks, for its cruelty, for its beauty, for its endless, indifferent grace. You know now that every sailor who's ever lived has had this same moment, some on ships, some in dreams, all caught between fear and wonder. The wind shifts, the water murmurs against the sand, softer now, a lullaby. And as the sun climbs higher, you lie back, the surf brushing your hair, the sound of the waves fading into something slow and tender, something that feels like forgiveness. Sleep finds you easily. The story softens now, the waves slow, stretching longer between each breath. You feel the sun settle on your skin, gentle and warm, and the sand beneath you molds to your shape like memory itself. The ocean murmurs quietly, as though it's tired too, ready to rest after all those storms. The smell of salt lingers, faint and familiar, but the sting is gone. What remains is only calm, clean air, the hush of distant gulls, the rhythm of the tide smoothing every thought into something softer. You realize that even the ship's ghosts have quieted. They're drifting somewhere far below, rocking in their eternal cradle. You take one last slow breath, tasting the air that isn't wood and tar and fear anymore, but peace. It fills your chest, heavy and light, all at once. Somewhere behind your eyes, you can still hear the creak of timbers and the whisper of ropes, but now they sound like lullabies instead of labor. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the world turning beneath the waves, slow and steady, older than any ship, older than any story. And you, just one small voice on its surface, can finally let go of the noise, the work, the worry. The sea holds you like it always has, not to claim you, but to carry you. So breathe deeply. Let the waves roll farther away. Let their echoes fade into the distance. You're safe now, anchored, weightless, whole. And as the last light glimmers across the water, remember, every sailor's story ends here, in stillness, in sleep.